Hello, everyone. Welcome to Leadership Talks for Emerging Leaders. Leadership Talks is a podcast hosted by Leadership Card, a leadership coaching training organization. Leadership Card is the brainchild of four individuals, Kirandeep Sandhu, Ashish Tata, Ram Ramakrishnan, and Devesh Mohan, who share a common vision to support 1 million emerging leaders to solve problems for self, others, and the organization. Leadership Card runs leadership programs for individual contributors and corporate clients. Our coaches collectively have over 100 years of experience and come from diverse fields such as academics, finance, real estate, and sales. Every week on Leadership Talks, we invite leaders from varied fields and industries to share their story and share tips and strategies which you can apply to accelerate your personal and professional growth journey. I'm your friend, Kirandeep Sandhu, a leadership communication coach, and I'm here hosting today's episode along with Mr. Ram Ramakrishnan. And today we talk about coaching in the leadership journey. Ram?
Thank you. Thank you, Kiran. In today's episode, we are privileged to have the presence of Ms. Ritu Gaur, leadership and team coach. She comes with 15 plus years of corporate leadership experience, an NLP trainer, ICF coach training facilitator, leadership development program facilitator, and mentor at Cherie Blaire Foundation. Thank you, Ritu, for joining in today for this leadership talk show organized by Leadership Card.
Thank you for being here.
So
Hi, Ritu.
let's, yeah,
Hi, Kiran. Hello, Ram.
Thank
Meet you.
let's start the discussion with understanding what got you there to the coaching journey.
Yeah, it's. I think for me it was a very personal thing which brought me here. Coming from the corporate background and if you really look at my entire career, it's majorly into L&D, learning and development, and so I've been deep into training since the beginning of my corporate career. And after doing that role for like 15 years in various positions, I started looking for. I felt as of now there's a stagnation. So how do I get further from where I am right now? So I think with that perspective in mind, I started looking at certain options which are available. How can I go further from here? And then I came across coaching, and I started exploring what it is. Does it fit my need? Is it what I really want to do? And I think after doing all that research, I realized that yes, it is. Let's start. Let's give it a try. So that's a thought with which I started. I
you.
wasn't very sure that this is where I will land up eventually, where I am, but that was the thought where I started off with. So because it was almost in sync with what I was doing. I was deep into training, and from there, coaching. So and then I realized while I was exploring, the training and coaching, yeah, they're like pretty much in tandem together, uh, and that was complementing my own skills and my own strengths. So then I just took this on. I started learning and understanding training. I completed my certification, one very basic was certification, which is ICF ACC. And then that's when I realized that coaching can do wonders because it impacted me personally in a lot of aspects. It brought on, it literally allowed me to surface a lot of my blind spots, uh, and it shifted complete perspective. And so that's my personal connect with this entire piece there.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. For the benefit of viewers, always this is the word confuses as coaching and mentoring kind of a thing. I would like request you to what are the subtle differences between coaching and the mentoring sessions?
Sure, sure. Yes, as you rightly said, Ram. When we say coaching and mentoring, the boundaries somewhere are blurred. Uh, Given the way we are, given the new world order. Having said that, there are still some subtle differences which exist, and I think which will remain, uh, at least for the time I can foresee, and later I don't know how it will evolve. So with that thought in mind, and I just have one disclaimer. that whatever I'm going to share here, I would request everybody to look at just with a lens of curiosity and nothing with right or wrong or this and that, black and white. It's more with the perspective of just remaining open to consider something. Yeah. So my own thoughts around coaching and mentoring in terms of differences. Coaching per se is a very non-directive approach. Yeah. So if you have a question, if you have something, then instead of just doing the spoon feeding, which might work or might not work in majority of the cases, because it's coming from my own experiences, it based on my strengths. You might not be able to kind of lift and shift as is. Coaching is more of, so that's what coaching is. It's like when I will allow you, I'll sit with you, and maybe I'll create some space for you to reflect and then come up with your own solutions. Yeah. However, in mentoring, it's more of, okay, I know this art. Now I'm telling you, just do it as is I'm telling you. So it's more of a tell approach versus being remain in inquiry. So that's one of the subtle differences between coaching and mentoring. Another thing which I can think of is more around coaching is more of formal setup. Though we can definitely coach. So like when I facilitate, I always share with my participants that there is formal coaching wherein you will set up just get in a setup with somebody and you're coaching somebody. There'll be like intervention for over the time. Having said that, you can still leverage coaching as a style to hold a conversation. Yeah. So uh, with that, coaching is more of that when you really get onto one-on-one coaching, it's fairly formal. It is a formal setup. You understand at how the cell flows. So there's a structure around it. Yeah. Now, when I say though there's a structure, but what gets filled in within the structure is actually brought by the coachee. I might ask you a question and I'll create a reflective space for you. But how that reflective space will unfold for you based on what you are thinking at that point in time will definitely be very different from versus what I tell. So when you really look at mentoring with that aspect, mentoring is more around, okay, I know and I'm telling you to do this, you go ahead and do it. So I think those are a couple of very basic but very subtle differences between coaching and mentoring.
Thank you, Ritu, for providing that clarity on that. So that's what many of the time the leaders have that confusions on what is it coaching and what is it mentoring. That has given good clarity, and I'm sure our viewers also like it. Over to Kiran.
So I would like to just add that it's really interesting having this conversation because we have Ritu, who is ICF coach. Ram himself is the ICF coach, and I am with the John Maxwell team as a coach. And each of us have our own understanding of coach as well as mentoring. And in the John Maxwell, we follow something called the AOOA model of coaching, which is basically about having the agenda, understanding the obstacles, looking at the options, and then from there going into the action. And what they've done is the A and the A's are separate, whereas the double O's could be interchangeable because it depends on the coachee itself, whether they want to be looking at the obstacles or do they want to be pressing the options on the day that they're coming in for it. And I also do want to add on that many times there is a confusion about people, the new coaches who say, I am a coach, but they are a lot of times actually mentoring rather than coaching because they're actually bulldozing the session versus giving that space of reflective thinking to the person to make their own choices. So I really liked how you've explained it, Ritu. So that was a really good add-on to coaching versus mentoring. Can we? So now you said coaching, mentoring, and training. So let me ask you to add on a little bit about how the training and coaching and mentoring, if there were three words, how would we now define training?
So training comes with wherein you really see that, okay, now there's a gap, there's a skill gap. Yeah, that's where generally training fits in. I so many times when I work with executives, they realize during the process that, oh, this is the gap which I need to fill in, and then they just go ahead and do some training in order to get some understanding, some learning, and then they go back into their own work life and kind of implementing whatever they have learned. So training can be an outcome of, as a subset of coaching, that okay, this is what I realize and I need to fill in this gap. So that's how the training is like a little different from coaching and mentoring.
Oh, definitely. So that actually brings me to the next question that I had. That as leaders, they, there are studies which have shown that 93% of managers actually need coaching, and this is according to the Global Employee Survey, saying that they are not really coachable. So how can leaders encourage the culture of coaching and mentoring in their own organization? How can they actually encourage that culture of change?
Yeah, I think it's a great question, Kiran, because when we really look at the era, which is specifically post-pandemic,
Mm.
uh, the order which we had earlier, command and control, it used to be the name of the game. Yeah,
Mm.
which no longer exists, and it cannot exist. Like the way businesses are evolving, the way pandemic has hit us, the way as there's this term which we call as VUCA world, and that exists. That's very real for businesses. So I think somewhere with all that in place, as leaders, we need to understand that old ways might not work. Now, the moment we start looking at in a different direction with this thought process, that what can we do, I think coaching definitely fits the bill here, and mentoring to an extent. But both of these, they are, though they are used interchangeably at times, but they have, like, as you were talking earlier, there are certain nuances and certain differences. So we need to see what works at what position. Uh, Coming to how leaders can really nurture the culture of coaching within the organizations, and maybe nurture the culture of mentoring. Uh, Somewhere we need to start understanding here that it's very important for leaders, first of all, to create and build that psychological safe space,
Mm.
because
Absolutely.
that is the basic premise of coaching. If I do not have a psychological safe space, people will not show up and will not talk. Now,
Mm.
until unless that doesn't happen and people start talking, the only way would be like fix it. Just go ahead and fix
Yes.
it. And
Mm.
fix it can only, so I'm not saying that it doesn't work. It does work at times, but it only works in certain situations. In long term, you can't just keep fixing, because then you just get into the game of catching up, and that doesn't help anyone. That doesn't help you as a person. That doesn't help you as a leader, and that doesn't help you as team, and overall businesses. It doesn't help. Yeah. So somewhere we, as leaders, we need to start understanding that how do I create that psychological safety within my own teams. So that's the first step which leaders can start thinking that okay, let's do it.
Mm.
And then beyond it, then how do I be vulnerable, because now the way the world order is, there is nothing new at all, and we will be hit with various surprises day in and day out. And even if I have like 15 years or 20 years of experience, but maybe I don't have an answer for it,
Yeah.
but do I have that vulnerability to accept in front of my peers, in front of my uh, superiors, that yeah, it's something which I don't have an answer for? What do I do? So do
Mm.
you cultivate that vulnerability? So it's only vulnerability which will breed vulnerability. If I'm not vulnerable, I can't expect my team members or my peers, or people around me to be vulnerable. So
Mm.
somewhere I think we need to start looking at creating that culture of vulnerability also.
Mm.
And these are a couple of things which will definitely help leaders to create and build that culture of mentor and coaching within their own domains and in their own businesses. And just remain curious. That's I think that's basic. That's basic from where if you start, rest will evolve, rest will come along, rest will fall in place.
I'm going to ask Ram to share his experience, because in his 30 plus years, he has been leading organizations. And how did he encourage the culture of coaching and mentoring in his organization, Ram?
See, as it goes, one of the thing is you start identifying the one is I looked at the people. You give them through the challenge and what is that they would like to do that. So when they take the challenging task and assignment, then comes in is saying that for what you looked at, what is the skill gap which get addressed by the training as we talked about. Then if you really see the somebody has got the succession planning part of it, he needs to do that, then clearly identify what is it you can tell him. See, there are, like, it always will not work like a mentoring kind of a thing. Always there are people want to experiment on their own and try to see what is it happening. That is the room which we need to give to the people. So that's what I provided to many of those people who worked with me. That has helped them to experiment on their own and see if something they are failing, they fail fast, kind of a thing, understand from there and start growing there. So that is where you need to create that environment. As a coaching, you have to tell them what exactly they would ask the right kind of a question. Is what I gone through this CTA coaching training, which takes now, ask the right kind of questions to them. If you ask the right kind of a question, they are able to identify what is it they would like to do. As a man leader, if you are able to create that, that is the good thing, and they find their own way of doing the things.
Yeah.
Aligning to the, yeah.
True. Yeah.
So that brings me, Ritu, to this question that, well, fine, we have created the right psychological space for them to do it. We are trying to be vulnerable. We are walking the talk. But in spite of, as a leader, creating a conducive culture and environment, the person who needs to be coached or mentored doesn't even believe that they need it. So let's address that part of it. So how do we get people to actually take that plunge? Because that's like literally requires a lot of introspection that yes, I do need to be coached. So my question would be two parts. First of all, how should how do we get people to really think about that they need to be coached or they need to be under someone's mentorship? Number one. And number two would be, what are some of the strategies that our coaches can apply to overcome their challenges?
So, to answer the first question, Kiran, that how do I, first of all, that as a person, both in strategy, that how do I become coachable? First of all,
Yes.
how do I even understand that,
Yeah.
okay, I can get into coaching setup or mentoring setup.
Yeah.
So I think the very fundamental thing which kind of is there in our corporate world, I would say, or in our business world, is more around that know it all has always been the theme throughout. That if I know, then I am the leader. If you don't know, then there's something wrong with you. I think that's a fundamental shift uh, at the mindset level which needs to go away.
Hmm. Yes.
So if somebody is talking about mentoring, that okay, why do let's look at a mentoring setup for you. Maybe let's look for a mentor for you. Let's look for a coach for you. It doesn't mean that you are not performing,
Yes.
because the first thing which happens is that okay, maybe I'm not performing, hence I'm just put into this program.
Hmm.
So
Exactly.
I think, yeah. So I think somewhere organizations need to do a better job internally to create that awareness that that's not how it is.
Hmm.
Yeah, so before you bring in anybody else, if you have leaders whom you have put into the program and they are like sitting there with the wall, with the resistance, even with external personal coach will not be able to do anything. So I think that's a shift at the very fundamental mindset which we need to bring in, within our businesses, within our workspaces. Uh, and that's where I think the HR or the ODE or the L&D functions come into the picture to create that mindset shift within the organizations. You
Yeah.
know. Coming to second piece of the question, that how do I do that if I decide to work with a coach, then how can I do that as a leader? How can I remain coachable if I choose to do so? Yeah.
Hmm.
So there are a couple of more, I think more than strategies, because for me, I'm very careful when I choose my words. So
Hmm.
I would say strategies. I would say that more than strategy, it's more of my mindset.
Okay.
How do I remain open, and how do I gain maximum from this? So
Hmm.
I think somewhere when you really talk about resistance, how do I dissolve resistance and become open? So until and unless that resistance remains there between me and you, I don't think that I will ever open up as a coach. You can do whatever as a coach. So I
Mm.
think it's it's more of that, when you get into any such setup, it's about practice curiosity. There are certain practices and certain rituals which we can, kind of start putting in place in our own lives regularly, not only in professional space. I think even in personal space, if we do that, it helps, because personal and professional is like not different. That's my personal belief. It's the same person everywhere. So
Exactly.
we must start practicing curiosity somewhere. That, okay, instead of being right or wrong, let's look at it with a different lens and see what's there. uh, Somewhere start holding ourselves accountable. It's not only just like, what can I do to hold myself accountable, on certain things. uh, it's not that every time I can just park a ball in someone else's court and say that it's done, I have done my job. But then how do I, like, hold that entire piece intact as a leader? I think that's another mindset shift which leaders might start to think about.
Mhm.
uh, Coaching somewhere is again, it's a practice which I was sharing earlier, is about vulnerability also.
Mm.
How do I remain vulnerable? How do I say that, okay, I don't know, and I still remain comfortable with it? Because the moment I say I don't know, it's like, okay, am I taking a step back and am I losing my position? You know, so
Mm.
would my position come into picture, into question? So I think somewhere we need to let go of that mindset, and it's okay to do that, because there is nothing wrong. You will never be able to know all. You know? And create and become and just get a little slow. Now, when I'm saying slow, it doesn't mean that you slow everything down and say, okay, now today, like, I'm going to Himalayas for meditation. The slow doesn't mean that way. It's more about you just mentally create that space for yourself to start
Mm.
reflecting. So it's only when there is a reflection you will be able to think beyond what you're thinking already, because
Mm.
deep thinking needs some time and some space.
Mm.
And if you don't give that to yourself, then it becomes very difficult to be coachable. So even if
Absolutely.
you work with a
That's
coach, it might not work. So I think those are a couple of things which if you start practicing, maybe strategy or mindset, whatever word you want to choose and use, it's I think it will definitely help leaders.
no, absolutely right. What you said, mindset. We also start our sessions with the mindset only.
Mm.
Basically, when you do it, the people when they are ready to have that mindset of changing, learning, or doing anything, that is where whatever you say will get into them. Otherwise, it's not. That's correct.
Yeah, actually, that's what I
We,
start off with. Like, Ram is right about that. Because, first of all, what is leadership? And then, number two, do you have a leader's mindset? And because if you don't believe that you're a leader, which is from your subconscious level, and you don't create that shift in your mind that you can see yourself as a leader, because what is my definition of a leader is anybody who is able to lead themselves, because you have to be able to lead yourself before you can lead others as well as the organization. So that shift has to come, that I am a leader. A housewife is a leader, right? You don't have to be standing on top of a building and
Absolutely
become a leader. So what is a
true.
leader? So that space that requires that mindset shift, which you just talked about. And only when you believe that you are, whether you are coachable, whether you can be mentored, whether you are even a leader, it starts with you wanting to create that shift. And that's only possible how you've just said, that with reflecting and deep thinking. And you need that space. We're all in this cluttered world, and we sometimes have to mute these walls around so that we can listen to our inner voices and come up with the answers and the solutions that we are looking for in this world. Right, Ritu?
True, true, absolutely true. The way you summarized, yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
Moving on from coaching question, one of the interesting thing I found out is you Charlie Blaire Foundation to
Yes.
support women entrepreneur. You are associated with it. Can we know little more details about it? The-
Yes. This Cherie Blaire Foundation, the kind of person I am, for me, it's always that how can I create a legacy? How
Mm.
can I contribute to this world? Money is definitely something which you will need till the time you're alive, right, to take care of certain things. But what's beyond it? It- What's what is it that you're doing for your soul? So I think for me, that's where Cherry Blaire Foundation came into picture. I was looking for something, and then I just got to know about this Cherry Blaire. I put an application as a mentor, and I happened to get selected as a mentor with them. And since then, I've been working with business women across the world. I just we just get into 6 months mentorship program with one woman at a time. And these women are women entrepreneurs who are either in the initial stages of their business journey or somewhere in the middle of their business journey. Those are the women I work with, and and when I work with them and when I see them growing and when I see that okay their numbers soaring, that
Mm-hmm.
the kind of satisfaction which I get there, maybe the money in my account doesn't give me that satisfaction. That's a food for my soul. So that's amazing work which I do with
Yeah,
these guys. And
everybody has got something to do with their soul. Now I would request Kiran to talk about that. What she is doing it for that soul.
God is too kind. So I could totally see the joy that you were bringing in when you were talking about how you are impacting and when you see those women growing and how it makes that thing. So as part of our journey, I've also started a foundation which is called the Give Back to the Community Foundation, and the vision is to educate children from low income families in rural India and select talented students who don't have those opportunities to get admission into Navodaya. And recently, our first batch of 19 students sat for their exam, and it was literally like a mother. I was like holding on and just waiting for that to happen. And our next phase is starting where we'll be supporting 100 students, and this has only been possible because of all the support that I get from like-minded people such as Ram right here, as well as my grassroots level leadership team, which has been working. So I totally understand when you said that we do it because we want to do it, and we want to create that legacy, and you're doing yours in your own meaningful way. Thank you so much,
yes, that's
Great. That
amazing.
is a great message. Not only as a leader, we all need to also work on certain things. That is the
which
great
is to
thing.
give back to our
Yeah.
community.
Yes, we are to our community. So now coming back to what would you say to encourage emerging leaders to remain coachable? Some final words from you for our emerging leader. We define emerging leaders as people in the age group of 30 to 45 in the middle of their career, trying to make a good jump start, or they're stuck and they want to see an alternate path, kind of a thing. No. So what would you suggest to remain coachable? Yeah.
Yeah. So like I was listening when you were kind of giving out the definition of middle leaders. So I think it's emerging leaders. Sorry, like as they say that there's something called mid-career crisis. Earlier, it used to hit us when it used to be somewhere in 45 plus and all, but now it hit us when we are in our 30s. So I think
Yeah, the
Yes.
burnout, burnout, absolutely.
yeah. So I think that uh, the only piece of more than advice or suggestion, I would say just a way of looking at it. Uh, Ask yourself the right questions.
Mhm,
That what is it that you want to do and what is it you are looking at.
mhm,
Uh, there are times, when we are into our jobs, not because of choice, but then we just fallen into those roles, those chairs, because
mhm.
that's how the career progression happened. And then by the time we are 35 or so, we start looking at, okay, this is something which I never wanted to do, or maybe I want to do, but maybe something more. Yeah. So instead of getting into the mindset that now I'm stuck, yeah, ask yourself right questions. When you ask yourself right questions, you remain connected with the resourcefulness within you. If you see, we all have resourcefulness. It's just that whether we are looking at it or not is the question. Resources are never a problem. Resources can always be created. But am I giving myself an option to look at that there are resources? And that's all resourcefulness. So remain resourceful, ask right questions to yourself instead of saying that remain stuck. Because the words for me, I always believe that words create the world. And
Mhm.
if you have a negative internal chatter, you are not going to land up anywhere.
Correct.
So, in order to ensure that you don't get into that loop of negative chatter, just ask right question. The moment you're asking right question, you will definitely get something or the other, some reply or the other from internal, from somewhere around you, and you can just keep moving on and just play along and see what kind of shapes up for you. So that's my only way of looking
Thank
at
you. Thank you.
things
Ask
there.
the right question. That is the right thing to do. Always to get the right answer, you need to ask the right question. Right.
Very well
So
put, Ritu. I want to thank you for spending this time with us and sharing your thoughts on coaching, mentoring, training, how the people need to remain curious, how people need to remember that their mindset shift needs to happen. And it doesn't matter whether you're an emerging leader or a leader or even a housewife. It is
True.
we all are coachable. So, with that, thank you so much for joining us today, me and Ram. And thank you to all our listeners for joining us. Leadership Talks will be back next week with another leader to share their journey. For more information on our upcoming programs, look out for www.leadershipcard.com, as well as follow us on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. For more information about Ritu, which will be in the description box, look out for her on Instagram, Facebook, where she shares her thoughts under my thoughts on her quotes, and follow her as hashtag Coach Ritu Gaur on Instagram, LinkedIn, and Facebook. With that, I would like to thank you and our viewers for joining us today.